I'm Samir, and I'm really excited to talk to you about the AI challenges in customer care automation. So when we are shopping, we are generally shopping, our expectations from any kind of e-commerce store is something like a physical store. We pretty much think that the kind of service, that kind of personal attention that we get from a physical store will be similar as we shop in e-commerce store. But in reality, our stores are somewhat like this. We are most of the time shopping online for most of the stuff. Of course, we go to the physical locations too, but I think a lot of e-commerce is happening online these days. And the problem is that the personal touch is missing in many cases. If you go to a small store, for example, if a very small store, you pretty much know the store owner, and the store owner knows, and he knows a lot about you. He might recommend you a product. He might help you make a return, and then do some chit chat and so on. If it's a larger store, then there are salespeople out there, and they will help you out doing returns and recommend stuff and so on. But in such e-commerce store, this personal touch is missing, totally missing. And that's where customer care automation comes in. So customer care automation, the sole purpose of customer care automation is to provide happiness, or basically keep the customer happy and make a customer a repeat customer. But when you think of customer care automation, a customer can talk in multiple channels. They can talk on Facebook, on Twitter, on Alexa, on Google Home, and so many more places. And that's where, when there's so many channels, and if you start thinking about it, the way customer care happens is that basically it's a question answering system. But there are so many different channels out there. Then these channels break, because how you're going to respond to all of these multi-channels, but then everywhere it's a question answering. And now if you look at the kind of questions that people ask, those questions are totally varied. I mean, it could be very specifically about a product. They might say that, can I make a return? It could be about your company. It could also be about, can I get a refund? When I'm getting a refund, and people sometimes are upset. But if you go to a store, physical store, if you're upset, somebody's going to talk very nicely, very politely to you, and because they want to keep you as a customer. But that doesn't seem to happen in e-commerce stores, right? So if you look at these kind of questions, and then if you look at some of the solutions out there, the solutions right now are mostly centered around some knowledge bases. Like if you have some product, then you tell about, the product does this and that, and this is my return policy, this is how the tracking happens, and so on. And in fact, the kind of questions, if you're looking at them, there are less than 10% of them you can answer through a regular question answering system, through a regular knowledge-based systems. The reality is that you have to have both the knowledge-based systems, and you also need to have a workflow-based kind of system. Once you have these two systems, then you can pretty much have a mechanism in place by which your question answering system will work. Basically, you can look up some of the things right there into the database. You can take some of the actions that you have to take when you have workflow kind of mechanism out there. But the problem with workflow kind of mechanism is it is too brittle. For example, if you have a chat bot, which is on Alexa or Facebook Messenger, and now it starts, you create a mechanism for, let's say, one company, let's say Carter's or something, then it's going to break for another company because they have a different workflow for returns. Maybe some companies have 30-day return policy. Some companies have 60 days. Some have probably a Nordstrom, or somebody might have probably any lifelong policy. So all these things need to be looked up, and they need to be hooked up specifically for that particular store. And that's where these systems tend to break. Now, if I go back to some of the common use cases, so these are the use cases in general that are there, which are tracking, frequently asked questions, returns, and reorder. These are the very common use cases. These are the evolving ones which are happening for customer care automation, which are product recommendations, checking product availability, checking nearby stores. And people are started asking all of these questions on Facebook Messenger, on Google Home and Alexa, and so on. And if you take again, you look at what our actual goal was. The actual goal was to, on multi-channel, provide different services so that you keep the customer happy and you keep the philosophy, the original spirit of the physical store alive. I mean, that was the whole purpose, but you have so many channels and things are breaking apart. And this is the problem over here, because there's so many services that you want to cater to. There's so many knowledge bases you want to look up, and that's where AI comes in, because you want to connect all of them, all of these services together into a cohesive whole, so that you can give that personalization, that kind of service to the end customer. Now, if I look at the current ML scenario, current AI scenarios, there are, I mean, you already know of some of them, where we have the deep learning, where we have the CNN, LSTM, BiLSTM, and so many other algorithms out there. We have the standard machine learning algorithms, SVM, random forest, and a lot of other similar types. Of course, we have the rule-based systems that are there. And now if I look at the challenges that are there in such kind of, now this is the, I just spoke about the different kinds of AI machinery or AI algorithms. Now the challenges here in the customer care are related to NLU, understanding the intent itself of what the user is saying, understanding what the sentiment of the user is, understanding basically taking all the user data and marrying it the NLU, and also understanding the product itself, the product disambiguation, and integrating all the workflows. So these are the, in broad level, these are the different challenges out there for customer care automation. And we all know, everybody over here, I think most of the guys over here are in data science and engineering and so on, that we have to follow the data. But the problem is, the data exists in silos in many places. In most of the companies, the data exists in silos. You have to take all of that data, and the labeling itself is a problem, because sometimes it's not labeled data, and sometimes the data is so small, but it is evolving category, and then you have to make sure that you are able to label it correctly. And so these are the problems that kind of you get into that once you start into the data engineering part of it. And once you take all of that data, you have to present it to some of your AI algorithms. Then only they will make sense of it. And creating a very extensible architecture around it is generally very difficult. And we need to have a very deep level integration. For example, like if you're talking about return policies, if you're talking about tracking, you have to know which, for example, tracking, you need to know that, this particular company, they use FedEx, over there they use USPS or UPS to send stuff. Now, if it's return policy, you need to basically hook into their return systems. You need to understand their return policies and how their workflow happens and so on. So it requires a very deep level of integration. And now that part, so I'm just going over the different kinds of issues, the different kinds of problems out there. And now we get into come back to some of the major challenges, the intent. So all of these, the intent has multiple issues with intent. Humans tend to speak in multiple intents. We generally don't say tracking. No, we don't say like that. What we say is that, oh, where is my item? I was tracking for this. It's so late, and now it's Christmas, and I'm really so upset, and so on. I mean, that's what people tend to say. And I mean, it's too mechanical for us to expect from people that they will also say like tracking, returns. I mean, right now people are doing it, but actually that's not the perfect way. The perfect way is that they talk the way they should talk to another human. And that's where the intent comes in. We talk in multiple intents. When we have multiple intents, then we have to find out which of the intent is more important. And we have to have a very high level of accuracy for that. For example, you don't want to return something that you don't want to return. You just bought a maybe very cool camera, and suddenly you said something, and your bot thought that, oh, you have to return this, and it just sent you a return label of this cool camera that you bought. So you need to have a very high accuracy over here and a very false positive, a very small false positive rate. And typically it is less than 3% false positive is what you're looking for. The other problem is that you might talk multiple intents. Now, how to sequence those intents? For example, I might say, oh, I don't really like this product, this particular pair of shoes that I bought. I want to return it. Oh, maybe it's possible. Can I get it in the nearby store? Do you have a local address that I can go to? Or maybe I can get it earlier because your UPS takes long to come over to my place. That's a very complex sentence for a machine to understand. Because the machine now needs to know that these are so many intents out there. He wants to return this. He probably wants to exchange it. He wants to get a refund. He wants to get a nearby store. And so there are so many things that the machine needs to understand before it gets to a level where the user is comfortable and goes ahead with whatever the machine is recommending. So in the intent mapping, of course, you can have a choice of algorithms, but again, the choice, because of the requirement for very high accuracy, you have to kind of take a mix of both. You have the regular deep learning approach, but that is not enough in many cases. You have to go deeper in NLP as well. You have to go into deeper into computational linguistics to understand basically dependency graphs and so on, and understand what the user is saying and make some rules out of that, and also marry it to the deep learning approach. I think that is how probably the actual intent mapping might work. Then we come to so intent is done. Now we move over to the sentiment analysis. So you have to understand sentiment as well over here. Sentiment is, that's a good thing that it's actually pretty much a solved problem. I think there are really good algorithms out there which help you understand what is the sentiment of the user and so on. But the problem arises is when do you really take an action when the user is saying, when the user is upset, or when the user is happy? Is it the right time or not? I think that is the fundamental problem. For example, the user might be getting a bit upset. As a human, if I see somebody getting upset, then I will clearly I'll know that, oh, I need to do something about that person. But for a machine, only when the person is totally upset, then only it might do something. But you want to really take an action when the user is just starting to getting upset. Or maybe the user is in a good mood. Maybe it's time you can recommend something. But how good? How good is the mood of that person? So these are the kind of problems that you have to now understand, and you have to figure out. Just pure sentiment analysis is not enough. You need to know the exact timing, the specific moment. I think these kind of things provide a level of empathy. If you can understand that very well, it provides a level of empathy. The bot gets a level of empathy with the user. And that's where the real usage of any kind of bot mechanism is going to, or any kind of customer care automation for that matter, is going to increase. So there is another issue with conversational, which is related to conversations. So people are saying so many different things. They are saying in so many different ways, so many intents out there. But sometimes they are also referring to an older stuff. Sometimes, oh, what happened to that return that I made? What about that refund that I was supposed to get last week? And then you are supposed to know that the conversation that he's talking about, something that happened last week. So this is not a new conversation. This is an older conversation. So where is the conversation coming to an end? And as humans, we are very quick in this. We understand that sometimes the conversation has, you're talking about, oh, we went to this really nice park last week, and we had a nice picnic over there. Oh yeah, everybody gets that. But when you're talking to a bot, then the bot needs to know that you're referencing something from the past, and then you need to take out that information and make sense out of that. And this is not a new conversation, it's an old conversation. And then you are also changing a lot of topics. People switch back and forth so many times. If you look at the data, that the way people talk, people switch back and forth between different topics. So understanding the topics and the transitioning from one topic to another, basically, again, if I go back to that older slide, if you remember, these are different services. So all these services need to interplay. They need to constantly be transitioning from one to another. Now the user is tracking. Now he's moved to returns. Now he's moved to refund, and he now wants to buy another product. So these kind of things need to happen very quickly in this mechanism. Now this is where we kind of, in the retailer style mimicking, here we come into giving a personality to the bot. So not every bot has to be the same. Many times, different corporations have different philosophy. It depends upon what kind of stuff they sell and what kind of customers visit their stores, and they want to portray a totally different image. So how do you take that image onto a bot? Maybe on a website, you can have a different image totally, and you can have a different style of the website, which is totally okay. But when you go to a bot, the bot is just talking. So the only way you can convey the different philosophy is by the way he says, the bot says, he or she, I don't know, he or she or it, says something. And that is where you want to mimic the style, the specific language style of the particular corporation or particular organization. There are, of course, template-based mechanisms out there, but they are too rigid, too brittle. There are some deep learning methods as well. But again, the accuracy is not guaranteed in those cases because you might say something you don't want to say, and you lose the customer. Oh, didn't show up the way I was expecting it to, but anyways. Another issue is the product disambiguation. So when you ask maybe Alexa, has my suit shipped? Maybe you're thinking about the baby suit. And, but when the Alexa is replying, sure it has, your suit will arrive tomorrow. It is actually referring to a suit that you had bought maybe earlier. So there is a discrepancy, there is a little disconnect over here. So knowing the right product, that what kind of product you might be referring to, and that particular point of time is extremely important. And this is part of, this is one of the things that needs to be done before you can build, you can understand what the user is saying. Now we have talked about the templates is basically the style mimicking. Again, it's what we call as the natural language generation. Template-based systems are not enough. Sometimes it has to be a mix of template-driven and some neural network-based systems. And the combinations are what generally tend to work better. Now, the other thing is sometimes the workflow of a particular retailer may not be optimal, and you want to optimize that workflow. Many companies, for example, you want to make a return, then you have to say something for that returns, and then it goes to a particular server, then it looks up the return policy, and then it comes back and tells you whether this is valid product, returnable product or not. Or maybe in certain cases, you need to optimize, and you have to find out that, okay, just because you bought this product and you are a good customer, you have been our customer for the last 10 years, you can just keep this product. It's totally okay. So all these kind of decisions need to be optimized for each of these companies. And each of these companies, they have a different structure. They have different ways of doing it. In fact, I remember just last week, I was trying to return a book from Amazon. And I've been an Amazon customer for more than 20 years. And they just say, keep it. So I think that kind of thing, that kind of optimizations need to happen in the bot level as well. Where you can quickly identify certain issues and tell the user based upon different kinds of attributes about that user. So now we have talked a lot about the different intent mapping and sentiment analysis and things like that. But where is the intelligence? This is all stuff like you can do entity extraction, you can do run a bit of LSTMs, you can run a bit of SVM and so on. Where is the intelligence coming from? So if we pause a little bit and try to think of this story of 6 blind men and the elephant. I don't want to go into the details of the story right now, but the moral of the story is perspective is everything. And if we think of perspective, it's a perspective really that makes us intelligence. It gives us a kind of intelligence to us. So let's say if I go to a friend and tell him that, hey, let's go for a coffee, and the next day I tell him that what happened. I'm just saying what happened, but my friend will know instantaneously was asking about coffee. Now I go to a stranger and I tell him what happened, and the stranger has no idea what I'm talking about. And as far as I'm concerned, as far as that stranger is concerned, there is very little intelligence over there. But in the case of when I'm talking to a friend, he knows everything about me and what I had asked and what I'm referring to. And he makes an instant decision based upon that particular thing. So that is what we call as perspective. But can bots have perspective? And the answer is yes. We can provide bots with a perspective. And the perspective is context. Once you have context, then you can pretty much build a lot of things around that. You can give a semblance of intelligence to the bot. And in fact, context is the central thing to what we do. Context is the base of all our workflows. It is the base for all of our natural language understanding and natural language generation. What is context? Context has just deeper information about you as a person, about the products, about the companies, a specific company. It has a deep information about workflows. It has all the algorithms that sit there. They're just producing different kinds of attributes about all these things constantly. And of course, there are the derived types. There are the real-time types. Then there are the simple types. I mean, this is pretty straightforward if you look at them. But if you take all of these, and if you take a lot of all of the user data, there is a large number of hundreds of attributes that you can calculate about the user, hundreds of attributes you can calculate about the products, and about the company itself, about the workflow itself. And this is where we say that the bot is thinking. I mean, this is our language. I mean, the way we kind of say it, the bot is thinking because it now knows something about you. When it says something, there's a huge difference. So when you give a book of Shakespeare to 8-year-old and he reads a sentence, doesn't make sense to that. He might read that sentence. He might say a sentence out of Shakespeare. It doesn't make sense at all. But now you're a 30-year-old person. Now you read that one sentence. It makes a lot of sense. So all that time you have spent, your education and everything, that is all context. That makes you intelligent. So these are some of these types, some of the things, for example, that we calculate all the time. There are a lot of aggregate information, a lot of information which is very simple. So username, franchise ID, I mean, these are pretty simple information. And some of we also track things like the number of failed conversations. And because based upon the number of failed conversations, you can pretty much rate how the new conversation is going to look like. And these are, again, some of the example items. So number of active orders out there and how many orders the person has placed. So lifetime purchase value is, again, an important thing by which you can make a lot of decisions about the user. And these are simple ones because they are just in point and you're not doing any aggregations. Of course, lifetime purchase has some aggregation to it. Now, when you have so many different kinds of context, now which context is important? So this is, again, a lot of machine learning, again, comes up over here because now we want to identify the specific context that is relevant to what you're saying. So there are probably a few hundreds of contexts. The one particular context that is relevant to you, you have to go through them and identify that particular context and apply it, and then make the right NLG decision to say something useful to the user. And of course, probably run a service in the background and do a return or something like that. So in this particular case, you have to identify a lot of relevant entities. You have to identify the best entities that are possible and which ones you need to apply. And yeah, there's a lot of science to it, a lot of art to this particular piece. And one of the again, a very central piece that happens in a bot. So I have gone through all the different challenges that general customer care automation will face and we also face that. The future actually is that if we can optimize the workflows, if we can take all the workflows that different companies have, optimize them on the fly. If we can take all the companies, different kinds of data from companies and make sure that the integration also is happening very quickly. And we add to all of the data, to all the different contexts within our system. I think that's some of the future which I feel overall the industry might move towards. With that, I think, thank you. That's pretty much what I wanted to say. And let me know if you have any questions.
I'm remembering the time when we used to call for customer service, and then they started automation. But then there's always that last bit. They're like, press 0 to talk to a person, and most people would just do that. So there was, like, I'm sure, improvements in the technology to try to encourage people to do the automation part. So I'm just wondering if you've dealt with that, or if you can talk about how to do that with chatbots.
Yes. So typically what is done is that you try to gauge the sentiment of the user. And if it is going towards extreme negative, if you sense that it has been, let's say if the user has been generally a positive person throughout, and now you can see a slight shift in the way he's saying things, it's a good time to hand over to actual human in certain cases. Depending again, it again depends upon what's the lifetime value of that particular customer. But in certain cases, you might want the bot to answer because maybe it's totally okay for that. And again, a lot depends upon, so a lot of, for example, context comes up over here because you want to know what kind of things he has bought. If it is like a thing that has been maybe $2 item or $3 item, okay, let the bot answer. But if he has bought a TV, a $4,000 TV, then of course you want very quick things to happen. So I think it's the same philosophy that goes in stores. So if you go in a grocery store, Safeway kind of store, the feel is somewhat different. But if you go into a high-end Best Buy kind of store, the feel is different based upon the kind of products you're buying and the kind of interaction that is supposed to happen there.